Si here. So my cousins have a piece of land in eastern Texas, and they call it Confugo Hills, which means to take refuge. And that's pretty cool. So I thought it would be really neat to make them a huge, ginormous sign for their property. I used rapid resizer and I printed off all of the letters to fit the size of the slab that I had. And it took 2 sheets of paper per letter. And I taped them together and I glued it to my slab, which is a big, huge piece of juniper. I used 3M77 spray adhesive and glued it directly to the wood. First, I used my small router with a 1/8 inch spiral bit and removed all of the thin lines. I am removing all of the black areas. Then I went back over and cleaned out the larger black areas with this big router that I got from an estate sale. Man, this thing is nice. It is huge for me, but also very light, so I can handle it pretty well. Then I sprayed it all off with air and brushed over it. Then I taped off the areas that I didn't want the paint to get into. I took it outside to paint it, and I find it so funny that Wally has to stand on it. Gibbs didn't care, he was just soaking up the sun. And it's also so funny that as Wally was leaving, he walked almost the length of it. So cute. Before I started painting, I brushed off any dust, and then I fixed the blue tape that was loose after moving it. Then Cyclone and I sprayed over the routed areas with the black primer. Then I removed the tape and started sanding away, and I love this part. Then I sprayed it off with air and I went back over some areas with the stick sander. But I wanted it pretty rustic looking anyway, like a tough Texan ranch sign. And here's a quick view of how it was looking at this point. Then I sanded the back with a belt sander, and some of these big juniper slabs have so many bark inclusions on one side or the other that you can usually only work on one side. This one, however, was nice and solid on the back too. So I printed off a verse and I routed that in. The verse is Proverbs 3:6 from the King James Version, which says, "In all thy ways acknowledge him, and he shall direct thy paths." I sprayed the black primer right there in the shop. I figured I wouldn't have much overspray since it is a smaller routed area in the middle section of the slab. I turned on the jet filtration system and I left it to dry overnight, and it was just fine. The next day I removed the papers. I didn't mind that parts of the paper stuck to the wood because I would be able to sand them off pretty easily. Sometimes that glue gums up the sandpaper, but I didn't have too many areas that gave me much trouble. Then Cyclone and I put a couple of coats of Helmsman Spar on the back, so the sign can be out in the weather. Then we put a couple of coats on the front of the sign. It's done, and it's ready to be delivered. Yay! So it measures 8 feet 10 inches long. Yay! And that's 16 inches wide over there and 12 inches over here. So I'm excited to give it to them. So thanks for, oh, we need to look at the other side. And there's the back. It says, "In all thy ways acknowledge him, and he shall direct thy paths." Proverbs 3:6. Yay! The idea is if this is a sign hanging up over some property, when people are leaving, this is what they see. So thanks for joining me, everybody, and we'll see you next time. Bye!